Looks like everybody's off till 8 o'clock.
Yeah, all right. I do have it on, we're unmuted, so, all right. I think we figured out the issue. Someone else was running a meeting, and we got them to stop, so, but we did say we're gonna recess till 8 o'clock, so we'll resume at that point, give everyone a chance to catch their breath and, get back to normal. All right, I'm gonna put it on mute.
tell people we are waiting till the 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
But we had,
Yeah, we're back on.
we're back on. All right, just for everyone in attendance that can hear me, we did find the culprits that were using the link and kicking us out of our meeting. The last word I did get out is that we were going to take a recess until 8 o'clock, which, because it's a public meeting, we will do, but I can tell you we have resolved the issue, so we will be able to proceed to 8 o'clock. Okay, zoning board review is back in session. Before we proceed, I want to offer my utmost apologies to Miss Anthony and her expert witnesses, and to the applicant themselves, also to any abutters, and also the board's apologies to any other petitions that are now going to be delayed being heard tonight due to this. I also would like to publicly thank Mr. Ashola, our Assistant Town Planner and Zoning Enforcement Officer, for being persistent enough to figure out a way to find out who the guilty parties were that were interrupting the meeting. So kudos to Mike, because otherwise I don't know what we would have done. Okay, so again, Mr. Vadakis, if you're on, we want you to continue. Let's make sure all our members are on.
Yeah, I think we're missing Eric.
Okay, let me see if we can get Mr. Forza back on. So that's the only one we're waiting on, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's just give it a second here. I can call him if I have to. Here he comes. There he is.
He's here.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Okay, Mr. Vadarkis, would you like to continue?
Thank you. Yes, if I may, I'll just dive right back into where I was on sheet 2 of 4 on the drawings, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so just to back up, I was going through what a ground-mounted solar project looked like, and I was describing how it has driven posts driven into the ground, and the panels are south-facing, and they're not tracking or anything like that. So I did want to point out, yeah, there's a section there on the next sheet. You can see the cross-section on plan view and section view. A couple other things on the site plan I want to point out before we move on. Just some other site features with access. There's an access road on the western side of the site. You can see it's in that dark gray. It kind of loops in. There's a 20-foot wide gravel access road, and it terminates up at the proposed fence. So there's a locked gate there. And then also within the array on the western side, there's 2 rectangular boxes. Those are transformers, where within the array, there's inverters on the back of the, yes, right there. The inverters collect the energy, send it underground in conduits to those transformers, and then that conduit gets sent out along the road. There's a series of dots and arrows calling out proposed poles, which head out to the interconnection point on West Main Road. Just a couple other things on here. On the south side, there's a rectangular shape, some proposed contours. We have a stormwater basin proposed there. So in terms of stormwater, we have some vegetation clearing that I mentioned, but the ground surface underneath the array is going to be grass. So there's very minimal impervious area we're adding here. So very little increase in stormwater, but we have that basin there on the south side to account for any of that. And also there's many line types surrounding the project that account for erosion and sedimentation controls. All of this has been submitted in the packet. You'll see the stormwater report, and this is currently under review by Rhode Island DEM right now. Just a couple other things I want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Quick question for you before you go too far. So the ground mounted array is, and I don't know if are you familiar with the area? So, I mean, if you're familiar with any solar buildings in this area, there's some that's over on the west side, right on the main road that the government put in. Are you familiar with that project?
I haven't seen it myself, but I am familiar with the project, correct?
Okay. I'm curious if there's been test bores done on this site. Because it's my belief there's a lot of ledge up in this area. And what happens if you attempt to drive stakes in and you hit ledge? Does it shorten the legs on the array? How do you pin it down?
Yep, so we've done some soil test pits in the area of the stormwater basin. That was mainly to confirm the soil types for our drainage calculations. In general speaking, I don't want to speak on behalf of the applicant, but in general speaking, if there's shallow bedrock, there's different types of racking posts that can be installed, like ground screws or something that can drill down into shallow rock. Whereas you're not pounding a post that won't really penetrate the rock. But there are different types of foundations that can be installed to account for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, I believe Miss Anthony had her hand raised.
If you have any further questions along those lines, I'd be happy to have Scott Milnes answer those questions. If you'd prefer he wait till the end.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. All righty, sure.
Okay. Do you want him to speak now, or would you rather have him speak
Okay.
at the end?
We'll wait till the end. We'll have
Okay.
Mr. Rodakis go ahead and continue.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll try and wrap this up. So I think that outlines the general synopsis of the proposed site plan. And on the next sheet, there's construction notes, dust control, erosion control, typical construction details on that next sheet. A couple more things I want to point out before I hand it back is our landscape architect, Kevin Alverson, couldn't be here this evening, but I wanted to take a look at the landscape sheets to look at the vegetation that really points out things in color. If we may, there it is, yes. So I mentioned the 50-foot setback we're meeting for the project from the property lines is maintained. And I believe there's a 30-foot vegetation requirement that we really wanted to focus on vegetating that full 50-foot buffer. So that's that darker green that's surrounding the project. That's remaining vegetation that's untouched. 50 feet on the north and the west, and off to the east, you can see those wetland areas. So the next layer in is a lighter green. That's an area of limited vegetation cutting, where I believe if anything over 12 feet will be cut between the tree clearing line and the fence line to reduce shading for the array. And then that bright green color underneath the array, that's that low growth seed mix that's underneath the array. Now there's an orange area on the northern section there that represents some existing red cedar trees. Now the intent there is to transplant any existing trees and repurpose them for screening around the array. So there's some dark green dots to the north and the west. Those represent replanted trees. So there's a lot of details in here about transplanting and landscaping, and if trees survive, they'll be replaced and new trees will be provided. So that's the intent there in that orange area. The existing red cedars will be repurposed to the maximum extent practical to the north and the west. And then there's a section you can see on the north, section A, and then also to the southwest, section B. Those represent the two view sheds, the two cross sections that are shown in the later sheets of the landscape plans. So I just wanted to point those out. Kevin couldn't be here to explain, but I just want to at least touch on those plans before we move on. And those are those two cross sections there.
Okay, thank you.
And then the last piece I just wanted to touch on quickly is section G, attachment G in your packets. It's far back in the PDF, about page 184. I just wanted to quickly run through the bullets of the zoning ordinance and how we meet those. It's way back. I think it's page 184, 185. I can at least get started for the sake of the audience. So I just wanted to go through those bullet items. Number one was that all solar energy systems require the reviews and approvals as outlined in the ordinance. And that's what we're doing here. We've been through the design review board, the planning board, We've got all of our applications into DEM, DOT. I did want to make a point on the DOT is that there is an existing DOT curb cut application back in the 70s. We've refiled an application of applicability to see where that stands, if we need to update that. So that's in the review of the DOT right now. But all those things are in process, and a building permit will be obtained prior to construction. I believe it was 185, Mike, if you're looking for that. But number two, this project is basically defined as a large solar energy system. The panels consist of about 180,000 square feet. Number three, we stay below the height requirement of 12 feet. The max height of the panels is about 10 feet. Number four was the yard setbacks. We meet those. I mentioned the 50-foot setback, and also maintaining that fully vegetated buffer beyond what's required. Number five was that the project's installed to minimally impact nearby properties and natural resources. And that's what we've done with the limited clearing, the fence with the height in 6 inches at the bottom. We've avoided the wetlands on the east side and done everything we can do to minimize the cutting and avoid those impacts. Number six was the interconnection. There's a copy of that study included in the packet from National Grid. Goes through all the electrical details. 7 was land clearing. I mentioned that in the landscape plans. The part of the site was open in the middle, and we've tried to maximize use of those cleared areas so that we're not overcutting. But we're not expecting to remove any topsoil or do any significant grading. And as I mentioned, we want to reuse the existing native evergreen trees there. Number 8 was security fencing. I mentioned that the 6-foot high fence surrounding the site. Number 9, the buffer areas and the screening. That's really what Kevin and the team we were focusing on, was repurposing those trees and working with the abutters to screen those northern and western areas. Number 10, I mentioned the ground cover and plant species. So underneath the array is going to be a pollinator species. We have a separate seed mix for the basin, the stormwater basin. It's just a low growth mix. All of this is intending to not be maintained. And it's all native species, no invasives, anything like that. 11 was lighting. There's no proposed lighting. And 12 was signage. Anything for signage will be for emergency contact only, and will meet the size requirements. Power lines, I mentioned that, everything underground to the transformers and out to the poles. 14, site control. It's described in the O&M plan. 15, stormwater, I mentioned that. We ran calculations for the 100-year storm and have all the erosion and sedimentation controls in place, currently under review by DEM. 16, no proposed pesticides or herbicide usage. Any modifications will come back to any boards as required. And then also the final as-built, abandonment, surety, those last few items are all described in the decommissioning plan that the applicant will comply with. So with that, I'll cease the floor. Back to Ms. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Bardakis. Just a few more questions. Focusing your attention on the 9 conditions set forth in the planning board advisory opinion, have you satisfied those conditions?
Yes, in my opinion, we have, withstanding the DEM permits that I mentioned, the preliminary determination application and the RIPD's permit, and also that applicability from the DOT. So besides those things, yes.
Okay. And I have, in your opinion, does this application meet the standards set forth in the Portsmouth Town Ordinance, Chapter 405, Article 7 for special permits?
I believe so.
Okay, I'd like to run you through them specifically. The desired use will not be detrimental to the surrounding area. Is that correct?
I believe so. As I mentioned, the project is about 7.5 acres. So it's about 30% of the lot. It's a passive use. It doesn't make any noise, if any, very little noise. It doesn't move. It's well screened. And as I mentioned, the applicant very amenable to working with the abutters on the locations of the screening. And we don't believe, the project will be detrimental to the area at all.
Okay. Will it be compatible with the neighboring land uses?
I believe so, for those reasons I just mentioned, with the limited clearing and the screening. It's a very passive use, and will be minimally visited and maintained a couple times a year.
Okay. Will it create a nuisance or hazard in the neighborhood?
I don't believe so. It'll be set back from the property lines. There's the existing vegetation, the retransplanted vegetation, and also supplement that as needed, as I mentioned.
Okay. Is there adequate protection afforded to the surrounding property by the use of open space and planting?
I believe so, for those landscape reasons I mentioned.
Is there safe vehicular access and adequate parking?
Yeah, as I mentioned on the access road, there's access for vehicles to come in. That will be for construction, but also following construction, maintenance will be very limited to the mowing and maintenance of the electrical system, which would be very limited to a few times a year. So not much vehicular access or parking needed.
Okay. Will there be noise, smoke, odors, lighting, or other objectionable features?
None proposed.
Okay. Are the solar rights of abutters provided for?
I believe so, in compliance with the ordinance.
Is the proposed special use in conformance with the purpose and intent of the comp plan and zoning ordinance?
I'll defer back to you, Ms. Anthony, for that.
All right, I can address that I will address that very briefly. I think, as the board knows, when this solar ordinance was adopted, there has been a proposal to amend the comp plan. I believe the draft comp plan, community comp plan, is scheduled for adoption sometime in July. And there are specific provisions in that. There was an energy section added, as you know, with a vision statement that says Portsmouth will be a community that is energy efficient in all its municipal functions and supports the development of both public and private renewable energy production within the community. And also, one of those goals to realize that vision is to produce a set of programs and policies that call for the efficient use of energy, the development of sustainable energy resource, and the utilization of energy efficient transportation options. So we feel that this is certainly in compliance with the comp plan that is currently is being amended, as well as the zoning ordinance, which we are providing evidence on this evening. Mr. Vardakis, is there is the health, safety, and welfare of the community protected?
Yes, I believe so.
And is this the project consistent with the purpose of design standard as set forth in Article 9, Section D?
Yes, we met, as I mentioned, with the design review board and the planning board. So that was our intent, is to meet all the design review standards in that section.
Okay. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I would like to open it up for any questions the board may have.
Mr. Ward, any questions?
Yes, I have a few questions. John Borton, Vice Chair. In regards to the advisory opinion from the Design Review Board, under the comments from the advisory opinion, the board suggests that only evergreen trees be used for screening to avoid, I guess, visibility from the abutters to the arrays in the winter. Has that been adopted into your plan?
Mr. Vardakis, can you review that on the landscaping plan?
Yes, if you go to the planting legend or the planting notes on the side, the right-hand side, yes, that was the intent, was that evergreens would be used.
Okay, so if I'm in a butter, will there be any time during the year that I will see the raise after the buffer's been put in, the landscape buffer's been installed?
There shouldn't be. That's the intent with this. Can everyone hear me okay?
Or there won't be?
Mr.
Can
Varg,
everyone hear me okay?
hear that?
I asked the question, there shouldn't be, or will
I'm
there
sorry.
not be?
The intent is that there will not be. So that's the purpose for the applicant to meet with the abutters and work with the landscape architect on the placement of those trees. So that is the intent, so that there will not be.
Mr. Chairman, would it be all right if I ask Scott Milnes to be sworn in, so he might be able to also testify as to some communications with the butters already concerning these matters?
Let's finish with Mr. Vadakis first, and, and then
Okay.
we'll bring Mr. Mills in.
Okay.
The other question I had was, were there any plans for any temporary or permanent markers to define the landscape buffer or the setback buffers?
As of right now, there's nothing set in the field. Do you mean during construction or throughout the life of the project?
Yeah, that's what I'm curious. I'm just asking the question in general.
Yeah, nothing has been set or staked out there as of this time. But I would defer to the applicant on construction procedures, but typically the tree clearing line would be marked in the field so that, we did the survey plan and we base these buffers off of that survey plan. So the intent is that this plan is staked out in the field so that those buffers are met.
Okay. The other question, switching gears away from the landscape plan, in regards to security, I know you mentioned there's going to be a fence. Will there be a fence in the access road so teenagers can't decide to go party in the array and drink some beers?
I don't know how much of a party it would be in there, but anyway, the access road. So again, I'll defer to the applicant when he comes on. However, as what's shown now is the access road terminates at the fence and there's a gate there. So I believe you might be asking, will there be another gate out closer to West Main Road? There isn't one shown there now, but I'll defer to the applicant on that if there's, they're amenable to that.
Okay. Mr. Reposa, any questions from you?
Sorry about that. No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Horowitz, any questions from you?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Ladika, questions from you?
I have no questions now.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vadakis.
Thank you.
And my apologies for the interruptions.
No problem at all.
Thank you. Ms. Anthony, we'll proceed with your next witness.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to have Mr. Scott Milnes sworn in.
Okay. Is Mr. Mills on?
I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Mills, going to tell the truth?
I do.
Could you give your full name and address, please?
Scott Milnes, 13 Barlett Road, Middletown, Rhode Island.
All right, Mr. Mills, please proceed.
So I guess I got a couple of questions asked. As far as the entrance, we wouldn't be against a gate there. The issue with putting a gate there is when you come into the site, you're on West Main Road, which is pretty busy. So we probably at this site we would not want to put a gate at the entrance. So that's why we put the gate at the fence line. And as far as the trees, our intent is to transplant all the evergreens and trees that are going to be retransplanted. And I had discussions with two neighbors to the north that we would, meet with them to place the trees in the best places for their, to eliminate any view sheds from the array.
What about newly installed vegetation or trees? Will those be evergreens as well?
Our intent was to use the evergreens that are on site, and if we can't use them, then we would use new evergreens. There's a bunch of evergreens in the site that the landscape architect looked at and he thought they would be good for transplanting, retransplanting.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Milnes, did you want to talk about the project that's near this, whether they have the same racking system?
Right.
That was
The Navy project, which is the one that is right on the roads with no screening or buffers, that is the typical racking systems we would use on a project. We're using on this project. If we hit ledge, we can either, like Drew said, we will typically drill and pin if we hit ledge, and we do some pull tests on site before we design the racking. That gives us an idea of what's on the site. This site, we were seeing the Navy project, we were sensitive to the view sheds, to the butters and also from the road, and when you drive along West Main Road at this site, there's an upgrade slope up to the site, and then it goes down slope. So there's basically no view shed from West Main Road, and we turned the entrance and went north with the entrance, so we wouldn't be going straight into the site, and we're screening straight in. So we tried to eliminate the view shed in from West Main Road the best we could.
Thank you.
Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Warden has a question.
Yes, Mr. Borden, I have a question. In regards to, you said you tried to eliminate the view as best you could. Does that mean that you'll still be able to see some of the array? Or you won't see it at all?
From West Main Road, I feel that we're not gonna see this array when you're driving down West Main Road, just because the elevation change from West Main Road is lower, then the grade slopes up and slopes back down the other side. And we've screened the entrance with the trees at the entrance there. So we're pretty much confident that we've screened that entrance and screened from the road.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, Mr. Chair?
Just check. Mr. Reposa, do you have any questions for Mr. Mills?
No, not this time. Pretty straightforward.
All right, Ms. Horowitz?
No, no questions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Ladika?
No questions.
I actually have one, so I'm going to run back to the fact of ledge, and I believe you used the term pull test, correct?
Yes, we bring the machine and that puts the racking in the ground to the site, and we go.
You have to pull it out, correct, to see what the.
We push it in. We typically look for a 6-foot drive with a 1200 PSI pull out.
Right.
So we do them randomly around the site, and we get a good feel for the site of, what's down there and what we can do. We do have the option. The company that we use is RBI out of Ohio, and they own a drill company too. So we can pin into the ledge if we can't drive the post into the ledge.
So that brings up one question as far as if that is ledge up there
Yes,
and you do end up having to drill,
yes,
not knowing what type of drill they would use because we don't know what type of ledge it may be, but my guess is based on the topography in town, it would be shale ledge. Whether they use some sort of pneumatic hammer drill or what, possibly affect the neighboring properties as far as, the ledge goes. I know if you blast, there's certain precautions you have to take and monitor the surrounding properties. But if you have to drill, I'd be curious how that's monitored, the effects on any adjacent properties, i.e. any foundation that may be down abutting that ledge that could potentially be damaged from vibration.
We've done a lot of drill before, and the drill we're talking about is probably a 4-inch auger type pin that goes into the ledge. So it's not significant size, or, it's not a significant operation to put these pins in the ground.
And how deep do they, if you hit ledge, theoretically, how deep do they go into ledge?
I would say, depending on the ledge and what the ledge is like, you may only need to pin into it 6 inches, depending on the depth of the ledge.
Right,
You don't-
then you epoxy a concrete.
No, they would drill it, they would put a small hole in, they drill like an auger type thing that grabs right into the ledge, and that's how they would pin it.
Oh, okay, all right. Got it. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
One more question.
That's it. John Borton, I have a couple more additional questions. May have touched on this, I believe you have, but the emergency response plan with the Portsmouth Fire Department, has that been with the Portsmouth Fire Department?
Yes, we sent the drawings to them, we talked to them, we discussed the project with them. There's a letter from the fire department, I think, that we submitted.
Yes,
And-
I do have that on, I do have that in my package.
What we find,
I just wanted to make sure that you had reviewed the plan with the Portsmouth Fire Department.
and what we typically do is when the array is completed, we typically would meet the fire department out there to go to the site and show the emergency procedures to shut the system down, which is also supplied in the operation and maintenance plan.
Okay. And the decommissioning plan, I believe it's exhibit K1. Is that complete? You have the decommissioning plan in place?
That is the decommission plan that we have in place, correct? That we
Okay,
typically use.
okay. And in regard to the surety, what was the cost estimate associated with that, and how is that handled? You take out a bond, or?
It'd be it's typically a bond that's placed for the amount.
Okay, and what's the amount?
Drew, do you have that?
I think I have it. I think it's $97,242.
Okay,
These the cost estimate and the what we put together are typically reviewed by the town engineer.
okay,
I believe it's on page 8 of 8 of attachment K.
okay. And other question I have,
Yep, it's right there.
That's it right there.
switching gears, I think you mentioned it, but have you met with Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission?
Drew can respond to that, but they have a letter into the historical. Drew, can you respond to that?
Yes, yeah, Drew Verdakis again. Yes, that's been submitted. To my knowledge, we haven't heard a response yet.
That's all I have right now.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
All right. We can continue on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have made our presentation. We certainly can answer any questions that come up after you open. If you would like us to respond, if there's anyone in the public that has any questions, but I think we have finished our presentation.
Okay, thank you. I will, what I will do is once we have a butters or interested parties that want to speak to this, again, I'll circle back to you for closing comments.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, we will open up for any abutters or interested parties that would like to speak to this proposal. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. I think we have someone up there.
And also, when you're allowed to speak, please give your name clearly and your address. The first person here is David Howard. Go ahead, David.
Hi, Mr. Howard, are you on?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Just give your full name and address, please, for Barbara, our secretary.
My name is David Howard. I'm at 36 Mariel Rose Drive in Portsmouth. Not an abutter, but an interested party. My questions are, I suppose, more comments than anything else. First, for the zoning board, I had looked at the announcement in the Newport paper regarding this meeting, and this was not mentioned as an item. I know it was listed in the agenda, but although it falls under old business because this particular type of development has a high level of interest in the community, I would ask that for future meetings where it's going to be discussed, that it be listed in the public announcement. There are a lot of people that would want to be here that don't know anything about this because of that.
Well, it has been continued for every meeting since it's been on the agenda, and that's been publicly continued. So if someone were that interested and attended the first one, they would have known that it's continued on from there.
Well, that's your opinion, but a lot of people rely on the announcements in the paper to know what's being discussed. So I would appreciate it if more effort could be made in the future. Secondly, I'd like to comment on whether or not this development, proposed development, is consistent with the draft community comprehensive plan. Now, granted, I reviewed a copy that may have not been the correct one, but I would like to read one section regarding residential land uses. And before I continue, will somebody please confirm that this is zoned as residential land?
It is.
It
It's in an R20 district.
Yeah, it's an R20 district.
Okay, thank you. The draft plan under their policy land use -2.1 says residential land uses are intended to allow orderly development of residential dwellings designed to complement the natural features of the land, to promote suitable placement of buildings and related facilities in relation to the site and the surrounding areas, with adequate living space and open space to avoid overcrowding of land, to encourage good design, to avoid overburdening municipal facilities, and to ensure compatibility with the immediate neighborhood and with the natural environment. Now, I know, and you are probably well aware, that this particular type of land, zoned land, is being contested in the solar ordinance. There has been draft amendments submitted to the planning board that have changes that would not allow commercial development in residential land. And I think we need to be honest that this is commercial development.
Okay, well, I can't speak to anything that's being discussed. The only thing this board can go by is what an active ordinance is. And we currently have an active ordinance 2020-12-14, whereas solar systems are allowed under special use permit and in R20, and R10, 20, 30, 40, and 60 zones. And that's what we have to go by. Even if this were contested in court, it's still a valid ordinance until deemed otherwise. And that's what we have to go by. We can't go by any speculation.
I understand that. And I don't envy the zoning board of review having to take this matter under hand. This, to a lot of residents, the two proposed projects that are in place have been submitted and rushed through without adequate attention given to residential input regarding whether or not the solar ordinance is legal, let alone valid. I'd also like to point out that in the general legislation zoning regulations, Article 5 has a table that lists principal use districts, and under residential use, there is nothing that says anything about any kind of commercial development. So Article 22 apparently disagrees with Article 5, and I understand that the Zoning Board of Review can consider things other than what's in the regulations. However, I'd just like to point out to the zoning board of review that I really feel like this has been rushed through. I don't think we've had an adequate input into it. And, you know, it seems to be a disservice to the residents if these are being rushed through without having the solar ordinance considered in court, which it is right now, whether it's compatible with the comprehensive plan. So I understand you're in a difficult position, but I've got to say that somebody has to say this, that there should not be commercial development in areas zoned residential. And with that, I'll be quiet.
Okay, and again, it's an opinion. We do appreciate your opinion. I will comment that my personal opinion is I do not feel that this has been rushed through. It's gone through design review, planning board twice. And there's been, you know, public announcements, public opinion is always welcome to any of that. It's before us now, has been continued 3 times, so it did go through planning process. So there's been adequate advertisement, adequate announcement for people to comment on this. So I don't feel if any of them, this one by all means was not rushed through. Again, that's my opinion. So I thank you for your comments. Again, as I stated earlier, we have to go by the ordinance that's in our hand, whether it's being challenged in court or not, is not up to us. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
yes,
add,
Mr. Board.
A comment.
Sure.
John Borden, Vice Chairman. I totally agree with the chairman's comments in regards to this board hearing this petition. Even if the solar ordinance is going to be revised by the council, this board has to make a decision on this petition that's in front of us. It would have required the town council to declare a moratorium on solar development until the new solar ordinance was written, and that hasn't happened. So we have no choice but to proceed.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other abutters or interested parties that would like to speak on this?
Lark, if you could give your full name and your address for the record, please.
Lark Roderick, 73 West Passage Drive, Portsmouth. I just wanted to just comment that I understand that you have to make this decision, but it's been pretty obvious that the people in the town are not really happy about a lot of it. And you may feel like it wasn't rushed through, but considering we had a pandemic and people couldn't go to the town hall, and that they counted on meetings that were canceled, not advertised, and it may seem really obvious to you on all of this, but unless you're breathing this every day and watching it, it slips through the cracks. And I know for a fact that there would have been a lot more people at this meeting if it had been in the paper. Now, granted, what you said might be true, that they should follow it and they should watch it like a hawk. But a lot of people don't feel that they should have to do that. So I just want to say that I know you're doing the best you can, but it's really not in keeping with what the residents want around their homes. And as we can see with this meeting tonight, it's all going to be good. And what they don't tell you and what can happen is what the people that live near it worry about. Who's going to take care of the trees when they die? You're going to transplant trees and you're going to hope that they live? Or is somebody going to be able to like look out in 2 years and things aren't taken care of? So I just wanted to voice my opinion because I have a lot of neighbors. I've lived here a long time, and this is really sad to see it coming this way. I mean, I know that you care about the town and you're doing the best you can, but it's already said that it needed to be revised and they're working on it. But this is going in under the wire quickly, you might not think it's quick, but it's quick enough that it's before the ordinance that's being worked on. And I think a lot of people feel that that's really unfair.
Well then, Ms. Rodriguez, that's something you should take up with the town council. To Mr. Borden's point, you could pressure them to impose a moratorium on this, which is not done.
Well,
Excuse me, I understand when people are very passionate about something, that it seems like it's rushed through. In all of my years of being on this board, I don't believe this one. I have seen some that have been trying to be rushed through, whether it's a solar ordinance or others. This one I do not feel was, again, my opinion. And the last thing I will say is, like you, Ms. Rodriguez, and as you know, I'm a lifelong resident of this town as well. And one of the reasons I'm on the zoning board is because many, many years ago, I didn't like the way certain things were being developed in town. There was an opening and I jumped on it, and I'm here umpteen years later to try to help control the way our town is developed. To that point, I will say publicly that we have an opening on this board right now for an alternate. And not many people who are, quote, passionate about this town are jumping at the chance to get on this board and help control or make a difference. So by all means, if there's someone out there that's that passionate, please contact the town clerk's office. And the last thing I will say is just say that all butters of these are very concerned. I believe, and I don't see any other hands up, I don't believe any of the butters now have any concerns, because I believe they've all been addressed in meetings with the developer. So I'm just going to throw that out there.
well, I just think it's best to say what people are talking about. And that's what I know, that a lot of people are concerned.
Okay. Again, if there's a group that is that concerned, by all means, have them contact the town council, get on the agenda, and ask them to put a moratorium on until such time as either the ordinance is amended or the new comp plan is put in place and the new ordinance is put in place.
Well, I hope that they get on it before there's more solar farms coming our way.
Well, again, that goes back to you, the public, to do that. We as a zoning board can't do that. We can't change an ordinance. We can't put a moratorium. Okay, thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? Please raise your hand. I don't see anyone else, Mike. So I will defer back to Ms. Anthony. Ms. Anthony, closing comment?
If I could ask the petitioner a question before she closes.
Absolutely. Mr. Borden does have a question for you before you close.
Yes, I would like to raise a question that was raised by the abutters, and that's in regards to the plantings. After you're transplanting, should some of those evergreens die, or 10 years from now, if some of the plantings die, how does the town of Portsmouth know that they're going to be replanted to preserve the integrity of the buffer?
May I have Mr. Vidarkis answer that question?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Anthony. Yes, as I mentioned, I was speaking on our landscape architect's behalf, Kevin Alverson. If that's addressed in the landscape plan, but also in the operation and maintenance plan, it's attachment J of the application. It's down on page 4, there's a vegetation maintenance plan. And at the end of that, on page 5, so on the full, that's page 229 in the full application. And that's also attachment J, page 5. That last paragraph addresses that. It says, I'll just read, it says dead planting shall be replaced as required. The contractor will provide a 2-year warranty on all new plantings. Should new plant material die or decline to the point where plant is expected to die within this warranty period, other than due to natural factors, natural disaster, or neglect, contractor shall remove the plant and replace said plant material with new plantings in accordance with the size and variety specified. All replacement plant material shall carry a new 2-year warranty starting from the date of replacement. So that comment had come up throughout our review process, and that part of the O&M was addressed with Mr. Alverson and the applicant.
So if plants should die, and I'm in a butter, I guess, do I go to the town? How do I make sure that they're replanted 10 years from now? Hopefully your company is still viable at that point.
May I have Mr. Milnes answer that question?
Sure.
The site would, the operation and maintenance of the site would have the site visited, I think on a project like this, probably twice a year. So they would probably, when they visit the site, they would, if they notice any trees that died or need replacements, they would, based on the O&M plan, they would replace them. Obviously, if they didn't notice any and someone called the town or the building inspector and, noticed it, then they could let them know and they would be replaced per the operation maintenance plan that's to be recorded with the town.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Anthony, if you'd like to close.
Yes, I would. Thank you so much. I just would like to start by acknowledging the comments made by the people who have spoken tonight from the public. I do understand that there was the Navy project nearby has, in some people's opinion, I think has been very poorly buffered. And so, and it's quite visible. And I think that's upset a lot of people in the area. I will say that we've had, some very extensive conversations starting at, with the design review board in terms of their desire for the evergreen trees. And then, during the planning board hearing, we had quite a few abutters that came and spoke and were concerned. And so the applicant spent quite a bit of time with their landscape architect to come up with plantings, a schedule. I know that as mentioned during this presentation, there have been some meetings with the abutters, and I think there's been quite a bit of focus on how we can best, how can the applicant can best buffer this project and make sure that it is not visible by the abutters or people driving along West Main. So I will say, I think there's been some extensive conversation and a lot of effort put into this. I will say that I think that we have satisfied the requirements of the solar ordinance and also the requirements for a special permit to be issued. And I would ask the board to approve the special permit. Thank you.
Thank you. That being said, could I have a motion to close the petition to any further comment or?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we close the hearing for further comment, and I would like to address the conditions that this board will place on this petition.
Okay, I have a motion to close the hearing to any further testimony or information. Do I have a second on that?
I will second that.
Who is that? Mr. Reposa?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Reposa. Okay. All in, by roll call, favor of closing the petition or the hearing to any further testimony, Mr. Borden?
Mr. Borden moves to close the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Reposa.
Make the motion to close the hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Horowitz.
I agree to closing the meeting, the discussion.
Mr. Ladika? Mr. Ladika?
He's sleeping.
Oh, no. Oh,
What's that?
We've been talking about this meeting for years. Remember when?
So Deke, are you back with us?
Yes,
All right, Mr. Ladika, there's been a motion made by Mr. Borden to close the hearing to any further testimony. Mr. Borden has voted to close it. Mr. Reposa, Ms. Horowitz, it's now up to you to vote yes or no, whether we're going to close the hearing to any more testimony.
yes, I do.
Thank you. The chairman also votes to close the hearing to any further testimony. So now I believe Mr. Borden has a number of conditions he'd like to place on that before we vote. So, Mr. Borden?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure how the board would like to proceed, but there are several conditions that I would like to place on this petition. And would the chairman prefer to vote one at a time, or would you like me to read the proposed conditions into the record, and then we vote on all of them?
My opinion would be that you read them all into the record and then we can vote as a whole. If someone has an opposition to one of them, please speak up. So please listen, Mr. Borden's about to propose some conditions. So go
Okay,
ahead, Mr. Borden.
I would like to propose the following conditions, and I will point out that if this petition is challenged legally and our decision is overturned, the conditions will still remain in place. That said, condition 1, a lifetime guarantee for all plant materials planted to supplement a no-cut buffer to achieve site screening requirements, and that should any of the trees die, the petitioner guarantees they will be replanted. Next condition, that the plan be developed with the Portsmouth Fire Department for emergency response situations. And I believe that's already been that's in place, and the fire department has approved it, but I just want to make sure that the petitioner is required to follow the Portsmouth Fire Department's emergency response plans. 3, the petitioner agrees to restrict the use of herbicides and pesticides on the site. 4, require that the maintenance agreements and attachment O, maintenance plan, K, decommissioning plan, E, stormwater operation and maintenance plan, J, operating and maintenance plan and emergency procedures, as well as the plan set forth in attachment B, attachment C, landscaping plans, and the final as-built plans be recorded in land evidence. Next condition, that the applicant must obtain approvals for all of the following prior to the issuance of any building permit by the building inspection office. Physical alteration permit application with the Rhode Island Department of Transportation. B, preliminary determination application with the Department of Environmental Management, Freshwaters, Wetlands Department. C, consultation with the Rhode Island Historical Preservation and Heritage Commission will be followed up and performed to determine the likelihood of the presence of potential state or federal historic or archaeological resources at the site. Rhode Island Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems Construction General Permit for stormwater discharges. And lastly, that the surety bond be in place to guarantee the decommissioning. And I would propose a minimum value of $97,242. And I would also like to add that all of the conditions that the planning board put on the petition, some of them are mentioned in the conditions that I'm proposing, but I just want to make additionally sure that all of the conditions of the planning board are included, as well as the condition of the design review board that evergreens only be planted in the buffer zone. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Borden. As has been publicly stated, Mr. Borden has listed a number of conditions to be placed on this, along with recommendation of the conditions of the both the planning board and the design review board. Do I have a motion to implement those conditions on this petition?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if I can make a motion because I proposed.
Okay, the chairman will make a motion that we include your conditions, the conditions of the planning board, and the conditions of the design review board as contingent upon this if it is approved. Could I have a second on my motion?
I second it.
Thank you, Ms. Horowitz, second. Okay, so by vote, we will vote on the conditions first. So Mr. Borden in favor of the conditions?
Mr. Borden approves all the proposed conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Reposa.
I approve all the conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Horowitz.
I approve all the conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Ladika.
I approve all the conditions.
Thank you. The chairman approves all the conditions as well. We'll now go on to vote on the special use permit. And remember, this is just a special use criteria, which I will list is what we're voting on. That the desired use will not be detrimental to the surrounding area. It will be compatible with neighboring land uses. It will not create a nuisance or hazard in the neighborhood. Adequate protection is afforded to the surrounding property by the use of open space and planting. Safe vehicular access and adequate parking are provided. Control of noise, smoke, odors, lighting, and any other objectionable features provided. The sole rights of abutters are provided for. The proposed special use will be in conformance with the purposes and intent of the comprehensive plan and the zoning ordinance of the town of Portsmouth. The health, safety, and welfare of the community are protected, and it's consistent with the purpose of design standards set forth in Article 9, Section D. Mr. Borden.
Mr. Chairman, I'll start off by saying that I understand why some of the residents would not be pleased in regards to the solar arrays, particularly the one on the federal property, which is clearly an eyesore. In regards to analyzing all the special use permit criterion for approval versus the testimony that has been provided to this board, I have to say that the petitioner has met all of the criteria. In regard to, I would like to specifically mention the interested party that referenced the comprehensive community plan draft in regards to residential use of property, whether or not this petition meets that criterion. Well, there's also the section in the comprehensive plan that promotes sustainable energy uses. And my hope is that with the landscape buffer that's in place, that this will be a passive use and that the petitioners will not, the abutters will not even know that it's there. In regards to noise, smoke, or odors, essentially there are none from this proposed use. So I don't feel it will be a nuisance or a hazard. And my hope is that the petitioner can sustain his business such that all of the maintenance of the landscaping buffer and the site can be continued for the length of this solar system. So I feel the petitioner has met the approval under the ordinance, and this board has no choice but to approve the petitioner based on the current ordinance that's in place. So I vote to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Borden. Mr. Reposa.
I also vote to approve as reasons stated by Mr. Borden.
Thank you. Ms. Horowitz.
I vote to approve for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. Mr. Ladika.
I vote to approve for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. The chairman votes to approve the special use criteria. I believe that this petition does meet it all. You know, I do sympathize with the interested parties that did speak. I know Ms. Roderick's family does go way back in town, and I do sympathize with her. A good gauge on any petitions like this are abutters. That's one of the best gauges. And when we have no abutters that want to speak to this, it's similar to a petition we heard years ago when CVS wanted to build on the corner and people were up in arms, and they did their due diligence by meeting with the abutters and did everything they were asked down there. And if you ask anybody that was near that CVS, they have no issue with these things. And I believe that's the case as well. I agree with Mr. Borden. I think one of the biggest eyesores and travesties in this town is that solar array that was put on the federal government land without any input or anything from the town of Portsmouth. And the federal government doesn't have to. But what people don't realize is less than a mile to the north of that, up on a hill, is a Cox Communication building. And behind that building is one of the first large solar fields in this town. But people don't even realize it's there because it's screened from view and it was done correctly. So I agree there are certain things that this town does need to control, and that's why we have our boards. I'll get off my soapbox on that and just say, I wish the federal government, one, never did, or at least asked for opinion from the town. And I think people's minds would change. So that being said, Ms. Anthony, your client's petition has been approved.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Again, my apologies for the little snafu.
I admire your persistence. Thank you.
It's Mr. Ashola's persistence.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break before we jump onto the next one because some of us need to. So we'll be right back within 5 minutes.
Hello?
Mr. Salvetti, was that you?
Yes, it is.
All right, just hang on a minute. As soon as Mr. Borden steps back in, the meeting will be back underway.
It's been one of them nights, huh?
Did you join earlier?
Yes, we did. And yeah, the haywire went haywire.
You did. Okay, so Mr. Borden's back. Zoning Board of Review is back in session. Let's make sure we have all our members. Mr. Borden's here. Mr. Reposi is still on. Is Mr. Reposi still on? Okay, I see Mr. Ludik is still on. Ms. Horowitz is still on. Let's see.
Very good. Very good. Love that.
Mr. Reposi, you there?
I think he might have froze up.
Now, let's see. I just texted him, so we'll see. Just waiting for one more member. You see Mr. Reposi there anyway? He may have to jump back in again. Let's see. Didn't answer my text. There he is. Okay, you back with us, Mr. Reposi?
I am sorry, my computer cut out there. So
Goes up a little bit. Okay, so Continuing on to new business, there are 5 petitions in 25 minutes. I can assure you that number 5, the Noel Clavelo, will not be heard tonight. It's questionable whether we get to number 4, which is the Nellie Cunha one, at all. We're gonna do our best to get through as many as we can. Anything not heard tonight will be moved to our regularly scheduled meeting of June. So let's move right along. Next petition is a petition by Vincent and Laurel Salvetti seeking a dimensional variance for lot coverage and a special use permit to construct a 22 by 24 garage, a non-conforming lot of record located at 64 Valhalla Drive, which is tax assessor's map 24 lot 196. Mr. Salvetti, you are on, correct?
Yes, I am.
All righty, I can see you. Could you raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth?
I do.
All right, could you just give your full name and address to Barbara for the record?
Yes, Vincent Salvetti, 64 Valhalla Drive, Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
Okay, Mr. Salvetti, why don't you tell us what you'd like to do?
Well, my wife and I would love to, we've been thinking about it for years, and we finally decided to build a garage, an attached garage on the side of our house. A few reasons. One is my wife is kind of ill, not seriously, but she could be. Our shed is dilapidated, and we need more storage. So we figured we'd try to see if we can get a garage put on.
Okay, so if I read your petition correctly, you don't require any yard setbacks. You can fit everything within the confines of the setbacks, correct?
Yes, sir.
You are looking for a 12% lot coverage variance, but you are a substandard lot of record.
Right.
Okay.
Is it 12%? I'm not really sure what the actual percentage came out to be, but I thought it was like the added that I was going to add was 4.5% added to whatever I already have.
Hang on a quick second. Mr. Raposa wanted to know if we can see him. He had to try going in. Mr. Raposa? Yes. Yes, we can. Okay, thank you. Sorry for that. Are there other, out of curiosity, in your neighborhood, are there other homes that have attached garages to them?
Yes, there is. There's one that was just put on 2 years ago. My neighbor, he's in a butter. He just had one put on. There's probably on Valhalla, probably about 10 or 12. And then on Norseman and Viking, I couldn't tell you. I really don't go up and down those streets.
Okay. Is there any other information you would like to give to the board other than what's in your packet?
Not really. I just want to build a garage so we can, do what we need to do and try to keep my wife out of the weather when the weather turns crappy.
Okay, because you are a substandard lot of record, there's also a special use permit required. So there's a series of 5 criteria I'll ask you the questions on, if you could just answer them. So if this were allowed to be built, would it still allow adequate space for fire protection?
Yes, sir.
Okay, would it still provide adequate light and air between buildings?
Yes.
Would it alter the character of the neighborhood or adversely affect neighboring properties?
No.
Would it create lot coverage and setbacks less than the average lot and setbacks of adjacent properties around you?
As far as the setbacks go, no. The lot coverage, I would have to say probably.
Okay. Would it impose a substantial detriment to the public or to immediate neighbors?
No.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Mr. Salvetti at all?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Borden.
I am curious if you plan to keep the shed, even though you mentioned that it's falling down.
No, sir. That's going to be removed. because it has no use whatsoever, and I plan on getting rid of the slab and, reseeding to get some more grass out there.
My mistake. I see that it's under the lot coverage page of the ordinance. It is subtracted out. So thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Mr. Reposa, do you have any questions?
No, not this time.
Okay, Ms. Horowitz? So,
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I think you're muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Sorry, it took me a while. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't, after all that. Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Ledica?
No questions, thank you.
All right, Chairman has no questions as well. So I do have to ask for any abutters or interested parties to this petition.
We do have someone that called in, so if you're on the Zoom app, you can use the raise hand function to be called on to give public comment. If you are called in, you can dial *9, and I will act as the raise hand function.
Don't see anyone, and there are no letters in the file. So that being said, Vincent and Laurel Salvetti are before the board for tax assessors map 24, lot 196, seeking a 12% lot coverage variance and a special use permit for a substandard lot of record for the purpose of installing a garage attached to their existing dwelling. So, Mr. Borden.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take the special use permit first. The petitioner walked through all the criteria under the ordinance with our chairman. And in my opinion, the petitioner has met all the criteria. So I vote to approve a special use permit for a substandard lot of record. In regards to the dimensional variance for the garage is certainly a reasonable accessory use to the permitted residential use of the property. Petitioner is going to remove the shed, and clearly the garage will provide not only storage, but vehicle storage as well. It's a reasonable request. I think to deny the petitioner the use of a garage would amount to a hardship more than a mere inconvenience. And I vote to approve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borden. Mr. Reposa.
I also vote to approve the special use permit and the lot coverage variance for reasons stated by Mr. Borden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reposa. Ms. Horowitz.
I vote to approve both applications for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. Mr. Ledica.
I vote to approve both for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. Chairman votes to approve the special use permit for the substandard lot of record, and also the 12% lot coverage variance, although it may seem excessive. In that particular development, Valhalla and all that, there are many, in my opinion, that come close to that as well. So I do think to deny amounts to more than a mere inconvenience. As Mr. Borden said, a garage is a allowed accessory use. So your petition has been approved, Mr. Salvetti. And again, the board's apologized for the technical difficulties earlier in the year.
It is cyberspace, and you guys have a great week.
Thank you, you as well. Okay, next item on the agenda is a petition by Diane Boleski for tax assessors map 48 lot 76, which is 108 Raymond Drive, seeking a dimensional variance to install an 18 by 34 foot pool in her side yard. Is Ms. Boleski on?
Yes, I'm here.
Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
You did a very good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to raise your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Full name and address for Barbara, please.
Diane Boleski, 108 Raymond Drive, Portsmouth.
All right, Ms. Boleski, tell the board what you'd like to do.
All right, great. First, I actually would like to thank Mr. Osceola. He was terrific in helping me with probably 1,000 questions, so I appreciate all his support. So as noted in my application, I'm requesting a 5-foot variance in our side yard for installation of an in-ground pool. This will still leave us 10 feet from the property line. Due to the location of our house on the lot and the location of the septic system, we're very limited in terms of the location of the pool, despite the size of the lot. We did look at all possible options around the yard. This was the only location that could work since the septic is across a large portion of the backyard. I'm requesting the 5-foot variance to make sure that we can meet the setback requirements for the septic as well as for the side yard. I'd also like to note that I've personally spoken with each of our direct abutting neighbors. They're all very supportive of the variance, and quite candidly, the pool. Pretty excited. We'll also have a 6-foot privacy fence there. So hoping that if you have any questions, happy to answer. We'll have plantings. And like I said, the neighbors are all incredibly supportive of the pool and the variance.
Now, this will be an in-ground pool?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And you do realize that the town of Portsmouth, the ordinance does require a 6-foot high fence around that with a locked gate?
Exactly. Yes, we're all set with that too.
Okay, good. Fuel septic, I see that. All right, I don't have any questions myself. Ms. Valesky, Mr. Bourne, do you have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reposa. Any questions?
No questions.
All righty. Ms. Horowitz?
No questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Wadika.
No questions also.
Great. That being said, I'll ask if there's any abutters or interested parties that would like to speak on this petition. If so, please raise your hand in the Zoom app. I do not have any letters in the file at all.
And if you're calling in, you can dial *9 to raise your hand.
So seeing no one, again, Diane Valesky is before the board for tax assessors map 48, lot 76, requesting a 5-foot side yard variance to install a freeform pool approximately 18 by 34 on her property. It will still leave 10 feet from the property line. So, Mr. Borton.
Mr. Chairman, again, similar to the last petition, a pool is an accessory use that's permitted under the ordinance in residential zones. And it's certainly a reasonable request. The petitioner is not requesting a lot coverage variance at 19.9 and compliant with that portion of the ordinance. 5 feet is certainly a reasonable request, and I always like to say in regards to in-ground pools, they're not really structures. They're almost, they're ground level, if you will, and don't create nuisance or hazards for butters. And I think to deny the use of this pool would amount to more than a mere inconvenience. So I vote to approve.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reposa.
I also vote to approve for reasons stated by my peers.
Thank you. Ms. Horowitz?
I vote to approve for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. Wadika?
I vote to approve for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. The chairman concurs with Mr. Borden as well, and I think to deny amounts to more than a mere inconvenience. It's a reasonable request. I think the applicant has done her best to try to conform to the ordinance as best as possible. So again, to deny does amount to more than a mere inconvenience, in my opinion. So my vote's to approve. So Ms. Valesky, you are approved.
Great. Thank you all so much. And thank you for your service. It's a big.
Are we invited to go swim in your pool?
Come on over.
Thanks. And again, my apologies for the kind of technical snafu we had earlier this evening.
Good luck.
Great. Thank you so very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Moving right along, the next item on the agenda is a petition by Kate and Dave Varela for tax assessors map 48, lot 42-43, 215 Macquarie Lane, residential home, seeking a 20-foot rear yard setback and a 20-foot front yard setback for the purpose of, I'm sorry, and also no variance request for lot coverage. Variances for the purpose of installing an in-ground pool. And I see the reason for the two variances is because they are on a corner lot. So the Varel is on?
Yep, they are.
Yes, sir.
They are. Want to raise your right hands? Swear to tell the truth?
Yes, we do.
We do.
Okay, could you individually each give your name and address to Barbara, please?
Go ahead, Kate.
Kate Varela, 215 Macquarie Lane in Portsmouth.
I'm Dave Varela, 215 Macquarie Lane, Portsmouth, Rhode Island.
And the little guy in the middle?
Sir?
I'm Gavin Varela.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and explain to the board what you'd like to do?
Yes, sir. Just like the previous petitioner noted, we'd like to seek the variance to have a pool put in for the little ones mostly. And we sought options throughout the rest of the yard, and mostly because of the leaching field, we can't put it in that location. And also, as you noted, sir, we are in that corner lot, so we have a unique instance where we have front yard setbacks on the side. It would normally be a side yard.
Right. So your address actually says Macquarie Lane, correct?
Yes, sir.
So that would be, and I guess Wampanoag is sort of actually your side yard, but again, for the purpose of my mind, Macquarie Lane is your front yard, and the area abutting Wampanoag Drive is to you a side yard.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, all right, I agree. I don't disagree, believe me. Okay, and I see where your septic tank is. So now I see why it's lot 42 and 43, because the leaching field, this is actually two lots, or really it's one lot now. That's kind of,
It's merged by use.
it's merged by use.
Correct.
So, and because of that, that house is canted over to one side where, okay. Got it. I don't have any other questions, Mr. Borden.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Reposa, any questions?
No, sir.
Ms. Horowitz?
No questions at this time.
Ladika?
No questions.
Okay, the only questions the chairman has, and I haven't actually looked at satellite view, but are there any other pools similar to this in the neighborhood?
Yes, sir. There's quite a bit, especially on the Wampanoag side that goes around that cul-de-sac area. We got quite a bit. The Lawsons, butters that we talked to right behind us, they also have a pool there, so it wouldn't be unusual or stick out in any form.
Okay, thank you. All right, I do have to ask for abutters or interested parties to this.
Again, if you're calling in, you can dial *9 to raise your hand, and if you're using the Zoom app, you can just use the raise hand function. I do have an email that was sent in from Matthew Chappelle at 207 Wampanoag Drive. I'd like to read it to the record.
Yeah, please do.
I'd like to voice my support for Dave and Kate Varela's petition for two-dimensional variances for the installation of a swimming pool. I live at 207 Wampanoag Drive. I have no doubt that the Varelas will work in a safe and interactive manner that will benefit the neighborhood. In my review of their petition, it appears that all criteria required for the soft dimensional relief are satisfied, and denying the petition would not be more than a mere inconvenience. Contact me with any questions. I apologize for not being able to voice my support in person. That's how the email is.
Okay, Thank you. I see no others, so again, Kate and Dave Varela are before the board, tax assessors map 48, lot 4243, seeking a 20-foot rear yard variance and a 20-foot front yard variance. Actually, they're both right. Wampanoag would be considered front because it's corner lot, side yard. For the purpose of constructing a swimming pool in their yard. So, Mr. Gordon.
Mr. Chairman, again, this is similar to the other petitions. A pool is a reasonable accessory use request in a residential neighborhood. The pool is an in-ground pool. It's not a structure. It's not going to be 20 feet up in the air, and it will be fenced. And the petitioner is constrained by having 2 front yards. Variances that are requested may seem excessive, but we're taking into consideration that it's a corner lot. And the petitioner has really no other place to locate the pool, given the leak. It's a reasonable request. I vote to approve the 20-foot variance, setback variance in the rear, and a 20-foot setback variance in the front adjacent to Wampanoag Drive. Vote to approve, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Reposa.
I also vote to approve for reasons stated by my peers.
Thank you. Ms. Horowitz.
I vote to approve for reasons previously stated.
Mr. Ladika.
I vote to approve for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. Chairman also votes the reasons previously stated by Mr. Borden. I think it's a reasonable request. There's others in the neighborhood as well. Also, one of the abutters, Mr. Stell, has provided a letter of support. So it's been approved. So he can go out and buy a bathing suit now.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye. All right, next item on the agenda is a petition by Nellie Cuna, tax assessors map 4, lot 107. Modifications to a previously granted special use permit. Are they on?
I'm not. If Nelia is on, could you please raise your hand in the Zoom app?
There we go.
Hello?
Yes, there we are. Who's speaking? Oh, you. Oh, there he is.
Can you see us?
Yeah, we can see you and we can hear you now as well.
Excellent.
Okay, so want to raise your right hands, please?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes, we do.
Okay, individually, could you please give your name and address to Barbara, please?
Nelly Acuna, 121 Rhode Island Boulevard.
And Gary De Silva, 55 Maze Corn Road in Portsmouth.
All right, Gary, if I'm not mistaken, you testified in the first one, correct?
The first 2, actually. This is number 3, third attempt.
So tell us what brings you back.
So after our last meeting, we were approved, but where the garage was gonna be set and where the septic tank lies, the minimum, I guess, footage has to be 8 feet, and we were only about a foot apart. So we had to kind of redraw the garage, make it a little shorter and move it forward another 7 feet. So it was a total of 8 feet away from the septic tank, which we weren't aware of the last time we met until we had moved forward with the permit to get the permit.
Okay. So I think the one other thing that sticks out to me is the original granted petition was for a 6.65% lot coverage variance. But now you're looking for an 8, almost 9% lot coverage variance. So what changed from the first to the second?
So from the first one, I believe it was a 15 by 15 foot garage, which we shouldn't have, it was too short. I remember someone on the board even telling me, and as soon as we were done with that meeting, I actually went outside with a tape measure and I measured it. I'm like, you know what? It's barely gonna fit my mother-in-law's car. So then we came back the second time with a 23 by 16 foot, which made much more sense. It was bigger. We needed the oversized garage for the ride-on lawnmower and the snowplow, which was great. We got the approval, and then that's when the septic tank came in and the piping was too close to the foundation per DEM regulations. As I found out, you have to be a minimum of 8 feet away. So now here we are again with 22 by 16 is the new measurements, actually cutting it a foot shorter than the second time we had met.
Okay. Sure this is it?
I hope so.
Remember, measure twice, cut once.
Yes, oh, that's ingrained in my mind. So I would like to ask,
location, really not much else has changed.
well, we made the garage a foot shorter, and technically it's now closer to the property line on the driveway side. So I don't know if that was going to be an issue.
So let's see. So you're seeking a 19 foot.
And 19 foot.
A 19 foot front yard variance. Okay.
Mhm.
And a 9.2 side yard variance.
Right, we're still within, well, more than 10 feet away from the neighbor on the side there.
Right, right.
Is it rear or side?
It says rear, yeah. Rear yard.
Yeah, like a total assistant town planner, house faces on Rhode Island Boulevard.
Yeah.
So the side opposite that, which where
Right.
the driveway's located.
They're on a corner, they're on Browning.
Yes.
Yeah, corner lot, yep.
Greenfield, right, okay. Yeah, I will go over that. So I do have to go over the special use criteria again.
Okay.
Oh. So, we can do that. So if approved, would it allow adequate space for fire protection?
Yes,
Would it still provide adequate light and air between buildings?
yes,
Would it alter the character of the neighborhood or adversely affect neighboring property?
it would not adversely affect neighboring property.
Would it create lot coverage and setbacks less than the average lot coverage and setbacks?
I'm not sure how to answer that, to be honest with you. Could you ask that again?
Would it create lot coverage and setbacks less than the average lot coverage and setbacks of adjacent properties?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Would it impose a substantial detriment to the public or to immediate neighbors?
No.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ward, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Reposa?
No questions.
Ms. Horowitz?
No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Wadika?
No questions?
Thank you. Chairman has no questions either. Do we have any abutters or interested parties in this?
If you'd like to speak on this application, you can use the raise hand function in the Zoom app or *9 to raise your hand.
Okay, seeing no one, Nellie Kuhn is before the board, tax assessors map 4, lot 107, seeking to modify a previously granted dimensional variance and special use permit for substandard lot of record. Applicants giving testimony that they do meet all the criteria for the substandard lot of record, and the board has previously voted in that way. They're now seeking a 19-foot front yard variance and a 9.2-foot rear yard variance for the purpose of installing a garage. Reason for this is they realized soon after that they needed to be further away from the septic tank than originally was planned. So, Mr. Borden.
Mr. Chairman, I'll take the special use request for substandard lot of record. And again, the petitioner has walked through the criterion with the chairman, and in my opinion, the petitioner meets all the criterion under the ordinance, so I vote to approve. In regards to the dimensional variances, a garage is a reasonable request as an accessory use. And the petitioners, in all good faith, came to the town and this board of review for approvals, and then found out that they needed to comply with the distance from the septic tank through no fault of their own. I vote to approve the front yard setback to the south of 19 feet and the rear yard setback of 9.2 feet. Petitioner is constrained by the fact that they have to meet 2 setbacks as a corner lot. And in regards to the lot coverage request, I vote to approve an 8.91 request. The lot is substandard, it's only 6,800 feet. So I think to deny the petitioner the right to build a garage would amount to more than a mere inconvenience, and I vote to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Reposa.
I also vote to approve the lot coverage and dimensional variances for reasons stated by Mr. Borden.
Any special use permit?
In the special use, I'm sorry, yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Horowitz.
I vote to approve both applications for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. Mr. Ladika.
I vote to approve both applications for reasons previously stated.
Thank you. The chairman votes to approve both the special use permit for the substandard lot of record and also for the dimensional variances. So hopefully this is the last time we see you on this one.
Nothing personal. I agree.
Nothing personal. Best of luck to you.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I would move that we continue the petition of Nicole Noel, thank you, to our regularly scheduled meeting, June 17th.
For the members of the board, it's now almost 10 of 10. And I know this next petition is going to be contested. I have a number of abutters in here that have either written letters or want to speak on this, the petition of Noel Quabolo. Mr. Borden would like, has made a motion to continue this particular petition to our next regularly scheduled meeting of June 17th. I'll chime in myself that, to start this and go 10 minutes and then continue it on then, I don't think serves any fairness to any party, both the board, the applicant, and any abutters, as we would just probably start again next month. Again, my opinion. So a motion has been made by Mr. Borden to continue this petition to our next scheduled meeting of June 17th. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second that motion.
Who's that? Mr. Reposa.
Yes.
Mr. Reposa is seconding the motion, so we'll vote on it. Mr. Borden.
Borden approves.
Okay, Mr. Reposa.
I also approve.
Okay, Ms. Horowitz.
I approve.
Mr. Ladika.
I approve.
The chairman also votes in favor of continuing it as well. Again, I feel it would be a disservice to Ms. Clavelo, to the board, and to any abutters by starting something that we would just have to review. So, Ms. Clavelo, your petition has been continued. It will be the first item heard on our June 17th meeting. Is she on?
I'm not sure. There are a couple of people with their hands raised.
Okay, let's see what they have to say.
So this first. David Trustler.
Yeah.
You could give your name and address.
He's
for the
muted.
record.
That is Noel Clavalou. I'm on a friend's computer.
Oh, okay, all righty. The board has decided, given the time, to continue this petition to next month,
Okay,
okay?
June 17th.
The 17th, it will be the very first item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
It's Kathy Wright.
Kathy Wright.
Thank you. We just wanted to let you know that that time is not available for us, so that we will not be able to represent ourselves as far as our opinion.
Okay, then my recommendation or suggestion would be to either draft up an email or a letter, send it to Mr. Ashola to have it put in the record.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so you can express your concerns that way.
Yes, other than we won't be able to hear the full evaluation of what the position is, but okay. We'll move from there and see if we can.
Okay, I mean, we generally can't hold up a petition because one potential.
I understand. Yeah.
I mean, especially where there are other venues where you can state either concerns for or against, et cetera.
I understand.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. All right, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I
Somebody,
make a motion to adjourn.
thank you.
Second,
All right, motion's been made and second to adjourn. Mr. Morton,
Mr. Gordon votes to adjourn.
Ms. Horowitz,
I vote to adjourn.
Mr. Reposa,
I also vote to adjourn.
Mr. Wadika, I assume you do as well.
Yes.
And the chairman does too. Folks, thank you for your patience tonight. And again, thanks to Mike for his persistence in solving our little snafu problem. I think right now there's someone he really is not happy with. So, all right, have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. That was fun. That was a joke.